Red emergency lights cast shadows across steel walls. Condensation dripped slowly, every breath felt heavier than command itself. The depth gauge needle trembled at 140 meters glass, vibrating faintly, the ocean pressing silently against our fragile hull. Helmsman gripped the wheel tightly, knuckles white sweat tracing beneath helmet straps. Tension hung in every silent second. XO leaned over charts, grease pencil carving patrol arcs. Enemy sweeps closing in lines overlapping like traps unseen. The Morse logbook lay open marked final transmission. Words unsent heavier than any order waiting in silence. Scrubber canisters rattled faintly stacked like fragile lungs holding back suffocation. Air slipping time narrowing fast. Battery wells hissed acid vapor chalk marks climbed each line screaming urgency the walls could not contain. Sonar echoes blurred sweeps distorted. Destroyers or shadows no one could tell, only listening, only waiting. The ballast valve rattled under my glove. Choice pressed into steel surface, into beams. Or remain air dwindling below. Shadows stretched long red glow flickering. Every chart, every gauge, every heartbeat testified to survival's razor edge. Red emergency lights washed across the steel walls, condensation dripping slowly. Silence pressed heavier than any command we had ever known. The depth gauge needle trembled at 140 meters glass, vibrating faintly, each flicker, reminding us of the ocean's crushing weight. Our helmsman's pale knuckles tightened on the wheel, sweat traced beneath his straps. Hands steady in form, yet every breath revealed strain. The executive officer leaned over the chart table, grease pencil carving arcs, patrol lines colliding with the enemy's sweeping search. Damp paper maps curled at the edges, pinned down by clips. Beside them, a Morse logbook marked in pencil with the words, "Final Transmission." The chief engineer crouched beside the manifold wheels, metal scarred from endless stress, his silence louder than the groan of the steel hull. Rows of batteries exhaled faint acid vapor chalk lines marking the rise of heat, each stroke proof that time was draining away. Scrubber canisters rattled faintly stacked in order like fragile lungs, holding back suffocation, one shallow breath at a time. At the sonar console, sweat dripped from the operator's brow, irregular echoes whispered uncertain if they belonged to ships or ghosts. Fans hummed with a low drone. The hull creaked with pressure. Silence filled every gap between heartbeat and steel confinement. The carbon dioxide card edged away from green toward yellow, a quiet betrayal pinned to the bulkhead, a warning no one could ignore. Condensation trailed down the sealed periscope, trickling endlessly like the seconds we no longer had the power to stop. Damage control men crouched with wrenches in hand, marking valves with chalk, preparing each line as if seconds were already gone. Every passing minute was etched in grease pencil marks carved beside depth readings and the falling measure of our oxygen supply. The compass needle twitched with subtle hesitation, swaying, as though the entire ocean tapped against us from the outside. My leather glove rested firmly on the sealed codebook, weighted to vanish forever, if we sank a final burden in my care. Shifts rotated without words, logbooks passed quietly hand to hand. Sweat wiped away from instruments glistening under the red glow. Water dripped into a tin mug beneath a junction seam, each echo louder than footsteps, each drop heavier than orders ever spoken. The scrubber's delicate needle quivered a fragile line that measured the distance between breath sustained and life slipping away. The executive officer tapped his pencil against the clock face, synchronizing every station to the second time our only commander. A metallic ping carried through the starboard bulkhead, the pressure gauge flickering suddenly, nerves rising like sparks in the dark. Boots stood braced on wet steel plates, condensation pooling around soles, the deck sweating with us as if sharing our fear. Chalk arcs drawn across the tactical chart closed in tighter sonar sweeps, folding over our box enemy circles, pressing inward. A faint shimmer of light flickered through the periscope seams, proof that hunters still searched above, relentless in their pursuit. The engineer's pocket notebook filled with frantic lines, oxygen levels falling, carbon climbing, scrawled numbers staining the page. Shadows stretched endlessly down the corridor, painted by red lamps, each angle of steel extending the feeling of confinement. We tightened straps on our life vests, checked gear by touch rituals repeated quietly, each movement heavy with unspoken dread. The Morse key lay idle on its brass plate surface, scratched by years of use, a note pinned above with the last signal sent. On the chalkboard, arcs of sonar sweeps overlapped each other, the enemy's reach folding closer with every plotted return. Silent hand signals passed among us, eyes fixed on dials air was too precious to waste on words that would only echo. My glove hovered tense over the ballast valve lever, ready to throw unwilling, but bound to the cost of survival. The emergency lamp flickered once its shadow stretched long across the chart room wall, splitting our course line like a fracture. Moisture trailed down my cheek, indistinguishable from sweat, each drop a confession I never dared to speak aloud. Our silhouettes lined the narrow compartment, breaths, measured together, fall, welded by discipline into one rhythm against the dark. Under the dim red glow, charts and instruments loomed like ritual markers of survival, binding us to the silence of fate. The carbon dioxide climbed higher edges of the indicator, darkened. Every breath felt heavier, pressing like invisible chains. A faint hiss drifted from the battery well, acid scent sharp. Men exchanged glances, the silence carrying unspoken alarm. My chest tightened as the fan slowed, the scrubber rattled faintly. Breath became measured, shallow, controlled against panic. The engineer's chalk marks rose again, temperature climbing, each white stroke screaming louder than any siren could. At sonar, irregular echoes blurred into static, faint sweeps, twisting neither clearly destroyer nor harmless ocean noise. Condensation dripped steadily from overhead pipes, each drop a reminder of pressure that thickened with every passing second. The executive officer scribbled calculations, fast battery life, dwindling air reserves, misaligned the margins, disappearing. A faint vibration ran through the hull steel, groaning low. Was it our ballast shifting, or pressure from something outside? The helmsman's lips moved silently, counting seconds between gauge swings, timing depth, like a ritual to hold despair back. I pressed my palm against the steel wall, vibrations rising. The ocean itself seemed to whisper, hold, endure, suffocate slowly. Sweat burned in my eyes, hands trembling on the lever, discipline. Forced stillness, fear demanded action, silence was command. Charts slid slightly, as condensation wet their edges, smearing pencil lines into blurred paths that no longer promised safety. The scrubber canister clicked once, faint metal on metal, every man froze, listening lungs craving the sound to end. Our watches rotated without words, faces pale under red glow, breathing measured movements, stripped to only what was needed. The Morse logbook lay open, pencil poised, the word final, carved once more, darker, now heavier than the steel around us. Boots scraped faintly on the deck, too loud. In silence, discipline demanded quiet, fear amplified every sound tenfold. A distant ping bled through the headset, stretched and hollow, neither certain target nor certain ghost, only more doubt. The depth gauge needle flickered again. Its tremor matched the pulse in my wrist, pressed hard against the chart table. Shadows lengthened across the bulkhead, red light. Bending shapes, steel confined us. Time compressed into suffocating minutes. The executive officer locked eyes with me, no words passed, only the unbroken rhythm of breath and steel creaking. A faint crack echoed from below the hull, shifted slow, whether fracture or illusion, no one dared to ask. Condensation pooled along the compass glass, blurring the needle's twitch directions, dissolved into sweat and shadow. The chief engineer's notes, blurred with damp air ink, ran faint numbers dissolving like breath in the narrowing chamber. I checked the oxygen gauge again, needle falling slow, relentless, a truth no pencil line could hold back. The ballast valve hissed once, men stiffened, release restrained the ocean, waiting beyond claws, unseen yet felt. A hand wiped sweat from the Morse key brass, smeared dull, as if preparing it for one last desperate message. Charts were pinned again, red arcs traced tighter sonar sweeps, narrowing like jaws closing in upon us. Fingers hovered over levers, discipline demanded patience, yet the weight of air demanded decision. Breath for action. My glove tightened on the rail, steel biting my palm. The hull groaned again, every sound could mean the end. Drops fell harder, now faster rhythm of water striking tin like a countdown only we could hear. The scrubber needle edged red, quivering. Men's eyes fixed on it as though willing it back by thought alone. Charts darkened under the emergency lamp, flicker shadows stretching lines into paths that circled endlessly. The periscope well dripped heavier, light shimmered faint within above us. The hunters circled like shadows on water. My lungs burned with shallow pulls, chest heavy, yet my hand held still over the lever, waiting for the order unspoken. In the silence, every gauge, every map, every mark of pencil and chalk seemed to testify we were running out of time. The scrubber failed again, rattling like a hollow lung. Air grew heavier, breaths shallow, every chest rose with visible strain. A faint hiss escaped the battery well, smoke curled thin acid sharp in the air. Eyes tracked it as if it were death itself. The chief engineer slammed breakers shut. Sparks dim under red glow, the crew frozen in silence. Discipline held chaos down. Depth crept upward. The gauge needle twitching, pressure shifted, steel sang low. The hull groaned like a creature in pain. We braced as ballast valves clicked, metal echoing loud. The deck tilted slightly, control fighting ocean's relentless weight. A muffled boom rolled above sonar, screamed back with distorted arcs. Every man stiffened, waiting for the sea to decide. Drops of condensation splashed on the chart, blurring grease lines. Our plan dissolved under water that pressed on all sides. The helmsman's hands shook once, then locked firm again. Discipline, a mask over fear that sweat betrayed in silence. A sailor's pencil scratched furiously, numbers tracked O2 loss, each line steeper than the one before, hope narrowing thin. The executive officer raised his hand, signals clear. Every man shifted to stations, breath measured, eyes unblinking. Sonar headphones crackled faint mechanical sweeps above destroyer blades, cutting arcs that reached for us in the dark. My glove pressed hard against the lever heart, pounding hold position or blow ballast decision hovered in my palm. The Morse operator sat ready, hand near brass key, one final message drafted in silence. No words wasted before the end. Hull vibrations deepened, metallic moans stretched, every sound carried the promise of collapse or escape. Charts pinned again, red arcs closed tighter. Sonar sweeps overlapping, trapped, boxed, counted down by shadows. Boots shuffled quietly, each step deliberate. No noise wasted, every sound risked, drawing the hunters above closer. Oxygen gauge quivered. Needle sank lower, lungs burned. Men swallowed hard, silence broken only by shallow breathing. The ballast manifold leaked a hiss, steam curled like ghostly fingers, steel damp beneath our gloves. The chief signaled, cut to battery bank switches, slammed, sparks flew, darkness thickened as power dwindled further. Emergency lamp flickered overhead, shadows stretched across maps, the ocean outside pressed harder with each surge. Drops fell heavier, metallic rhythm on tin countdown. Steady ticking louder than clocks we no longer trusted. A faint crack sounded from below, hull shuddered, men froze, listening every ear, straining for fracture or illusion. Sonar operator whispered nothing, yet his eyes told us. Contacts moved closer, sweeps, tighter, time thinner. My lungs ached, chest burning, yet hands remained steady over steel duty, overriding instinct to gasp deep. The Morse key rattled once as if alive. Brass scratched dull final words, weighted unsent, heavier than any order. A sailor tied documents into a pouch, sealed with cord, classified words ready to sync with us if needed. Compass needle twitched again, blurred under condensation direction, lost only survival now remained. The executive officer chalked new lines, arcs crossing over our course. No clear exit, only narrowing fate. Hull creaked louder, steel flexed under strain. Our world shrank to red light maps and air thinning too fast. A sailor's glove slipped, wrench clanged, echo sharp. Every man flinched, silence broken, fear magnified. Fans coughed. Air stuttered. Lungs burned. Discipline forced us still, though panic scratched inside our ribs. Pressure gauge needle twitched again. Men leaned closer, waiting, hoping, dreading what the sea would deliver. The chief barked orders without sound, gestures, sharp hands moved fast. Steel screamed back against control. Shadows wavered across the bulkhead, red light bled like fire. Every corner stretched longer, darker, more final. Sweat pooled on charts, ink smudged into black stains. Plans collapsed into chaos lines, drowning beneath moisture. The Morse logbook closed with a snap pencil tucked final noted, sealed in silence, ready to vanish. Ballast wheel spun slightly, crew steadied it. Valves hissed bubbles unseen, raced upward into Hunter's lights. The deck lurched, tilt-sharp men grabbed rails, breaths caught silence heavier than any roar. Sonar arcs flared bright echoes, harsh enemy sweeps passed close, their shadow pressing through black water. Oxygen scrubber needle edged into red men's faces, pale eyes locked. Breath slowed by force, death delayed. My glove slipped on damp steel grip, tightened harder. Sweat and condensation mixed fear disguised as duty. The executive officer tapped the clock again. Pencil broke time, fractured moments, splintered air, still fell. A sailor scratched initials into bulkhead with knife small mark, desperate proof against the crushing silence. Hull groaned once more. Vibration stronger, ocean pressed harder. Choices narrowed, survival thinner. In dim red light we stood at stations, silent, disciplined. Every gauge, every drop, every breath counted toward the end. The ballast wheel loomed before me, glove tight on steel decision, weighted surface into searchlights or suffocate in silence. Oxygen needle trembled deep in red lungs, burned every breath. Shallow discipline held, fear screamed louder inside my chest. The Morse operator's hand hovered above brass key, final message, drafted unsent heavy, as the sea pressing outside. A muffled boom rolled from above. Sonar arcs flared, bright enemy sweeps, sweeping close, our box sealed tighter. Drops hammered on tin, faster, louder time, measured not by clocks, but by water leaking rhythm into the chamber. Hull groaned, steel-flexed moans stretched across compartments. Men froze, eyes wide, every sound threatened collapse. The chief engineer signaled ready hand over breaker battery life. Bleeding away, air-poisoned margins erased. I pressed harder on the ballast lever, mind split. Duty demanded patience, instinct demanded air now, at any cost. The executive officer raised pencil-traced final line on chart escape, marked yet no clear opening remained. A faint shimmer of light pierced periscope seam, blurred, flickering proof that hunters circled, waiting for us above. The compass needle swayed drunkenly, condensation pooling across glass, direction dissolved, survival only measure left. Fans coughed, once more, air faltered, lungs dragged, shallow heat filled every rib breath, no longer guaranteed. Boots braced on deck plates, soles slick with condensation, every stance rigid, waiting for the order unspoken. Sonar operator flinched, headphones screeched, faint propeller arcs above, shifted destroyers drawing closer still. Charts smudged, grease lines blurred by sweat, condensation, trembling hands. Our plan erased by sea and time alike. The Morse key tapped once, operator froze, message withheld, silence. Chosen weight, unbearable, but necessary. My hand ached against lever steel, biting through glove, survival narrowed to one pull, one moment, one risk. The executive officer tapped clock again, second hand, dead time, fractured survival, no longer measured in minutes. Ballast hissed, faint bubbles unseen, rising enemy ears. Waiting every sound, risked revealing the coffin we hid in. Hull shuddered violently, crack echoed through bulkhead. Men stiffened, waiting for ocean to tear steel into splinters. Sweat poured down my cheek, indistinguishable from condensation, each drop a confession of fear never spoken aloud. Shadows stretched across control room, red glow flickering every silhouette, carved sharp against steel walls. The engineer's notebook slipped, damp pages tore, numbers lost, O2 levels, unwritten survival data dissolved. My lungs screamed louder, shallow pulls failing, vision blurred, decision pressed harder than ocean's crushing depth. The ballast valve rattled once, steel screamed back. Every man knew one pull meant surfacing into waiting lights. Sonar echoes sharpened sweeps, faster circles. Smaller hunters closed in their shadow, pressing through every vibration. The Morse operator clenched fists, key untouched words stayed locked, last chance to speak, denied by silence. A sailor's glove slipped on wet rail metal, clanged, sound rang sharp, louder than gunfire in suffocating quiet. The executive officer closed eyes briefly, exhale, shallow discipline, demanded stillness, humanity begged release. Hull moaned once more, pressure heavier, ocean darker, steel trembled as if ready to surrender. My glove tightened, sweat pooled, lever cold, beneath skin duty chained me, fear dragged me, both demanded choice. Drops cascaded faster from pipe's rhythm, frantic countdown beat against our nerves. Relentless, merciless. Charts flapped weakly under ventilation's last breath, edges curled routes, erased hope, drowned in fading ink. Oxygen gauge needle. Collapsed lower, red line-bottomed breath, no longer sustained lungs fought against emptiness. Sonar arcs spiked echoes, shrieked enemy blades, thrashed overhead shadows roaring closer, pressing us to act. My chest convulsed. Vision narrowed, survival no longer strategy. Only instinct demanded breath, demanded release. The ballast wheel groaned under my grip lever, half pulled. Choice loomed seconds, thinned, silence shattered. A muffled explosion above shook hull depth charges. Distant closer echoes pounded against our ribs like fists. In the flicker of emergency lamp faces, pale eyes hollow, discipline fractured, humanity gasped its final reserve. With steel trembling gauges screaming air vanishing, I held the lever choice in my hand, fate sealed either way. Silence fell after the surge. Only the groan of steel remained. Every man counted his breath as if it might be the last. The hull trembled with faint echoes, depth charges drifted away. Stillness heavier than the explosions that had shaken us. Condensation pooled on the deck boots, soaked socks cold. Each step felt like walking deeper into the ocean itself. The oxygen gauge lay buried in red needle, unmoving lungs, pulled shallow, chest hollow, breath, more memory than air. A sailor's hand reached for the scrubber, nothing left, metal casing, rattled empty lungs, waited for mercy, denied. Shadows under red light stretched long faces, hollow eyes unfocused. Discipline cracked, silence swallowed every word. Charts sagged, damp pencil lines dissolved, courses vanished. Our last directions erased by sweat and dripping steel. The Morse key sat untouched brass, dull, the final message, unspoken words no longer mattered. Silence became the record. A drip echoed louder now, striking metal cup, each sound heavier than gunfire, each drop a cruel reminder of time. The executive officer slumped against the chart table, pencil broken lines, unfinished, survival no longer calculated. A faint crack sounded from the bulkhead, but no one moved, fear dulled exhaustion heavier than any collapse. Boots shifted slow soles, dragging men leaned on rails, strength leaking away like the last trace of oxygen. The chief's logbook closed pages, soaked final entries, blurred into unreadable lines, history drowned before it could be written. My glove traced condensation on the wall lines, dripping down like time itself, unstoppable, indifferent, merciless. The periscope well leaked brighter now, light shimmered faint surface, so close yet sealed away by duty and silence. Drops ran across my wrist, sweat or water unclear, each one colder, sharper, cutting deeper than the steel around us. A sailor tied documents tight, sealed pouch, set aside classified truths prepared to vanish with us into the abyss. Sonar operator's hands slid from controls, headphones slipped. Echoes faded, hunters above forgotten as lungs cried louder. Shadows flickered as lamp-dimmed bulb failing red glow stuttered. Darkness crept closer, steel coffin sealed tighter. A wrench fell to the deck, sound sharp, no one flinched, no one moved. Silence swallowed even fear itself. The emergency lamp went dark, only faint glow. From gauges remained, time ended in shadows, air ended in silence. My chest convulsed. Breath shallow, vision blurred, discipline cracked, instinct clawed, survival shrank to seconds. The Morse operator's fist clenched key untouched message. Unsent words denied silence, sealed the final record. Boots shuffled weakly rails, supported bodies, strength drained, silence pressed, only heartbeat echoed faint. Charts tore as damp edges gave way, final routes, shredded maps useless, survival erased. Condensation fell harder streams, trickled down watermarked walls like inscriptions of fate written by the sea. My hand still clutched the ballast lever grip, frozen choice too heavy, silence too deep, end too near. The hull moaned, faint pressure eased slightly. Too late, lungs burned, vision faded, silence consumed. Eyes closed one by one, heads bowed, bodies slumped. Discipline surrendered, humanity dissolved into steel. Under final silence, no words spoken, no signals sent, only charts, gauges, and steel bore witness to the end. In the aftermath, silence lingered, broken only by the hum of ventilation. Every man traced breaths as if counting ghosts. The hull settled slowly, steel groaned faintly. Shadows stretched, long reminders of the decisions pressed on each station. I traced fingers along charts lines smeared by condensation plans, lost margins, vanished, questions unspoken. The executive officer reviewed logs, pencil marks fading. Time, oxygen, and fear intertwined in unreadable patterns. Batteries cooled unevenly, acid stains, lingering engineers' notes, incomplete, every mark, hinting at what we could not save. Sonar operator replayed echoes, arcs indistinct. Did the sweeps detect destroyers or only empty water folding beneath? Condensation dripped quietly from pipes, forming rivulets along steel memory of every drop, every heartbeat, every gasp. Gloves rested on levers, grips loosened. The weight of every choice pressed, heavy fate recorded in silence alone. Charts pinned haphazardly, red arcs curling inward. Every trace a fragment of what could have been a path to safety. The Morse key sat idle, untouched, messages drafted, unsent, heavy with unspoken truth that no one dared speak aloud. Faces reflected in polished steel eyes, hollow shoulders slumped, discipline, exhausted humanity hanging by threads. Logs were cross-referenced, slowly gaps appearing where pages were lost. We marked them with question marks, unease lingering. A faint hum vibrated through the bulkhead fans, weak. Metal expanded, contracted, whispering warnings to those who listened. Condensation ran across instrument faces, blurring dials. Readings, uncertain history, uncertain survival, uncertain. The executive officer tapped clock once, twice. Alignment of events incomplete, shadows of possibility stretching across the room. Gloves smudged with graphite pencil marks smeared every scribble, a trace of our fear, discipline, and fleeting clarity. The hull groaned quietly, almost apologetic. Metal remembered the strain, men remembered the panic, all recorded in silence. Charts, gauges, and dials bore witness lines, arcs, and numbers standing as monuments to decisions made in extreme pressure. Pages of logbooks curled at edges damp. Final entries lost ink, smeared evidence of time and fatigue pressing down. Faces turned toward periscope port reflections. Faint light shimmered like questions dancing in the deep unresolved. Every hand hovered over levers, hesitant. Discipline and memory intertwined, recording what no voice would recount. The air lingered thick still. Every breath an echo of choices, every exhale a record of fear and determination. The engineer traced battery scars with finger-deep lines, heat marks, evidence of what nearly ended all of us. Shadows across walls flickered with dim red glow. Every corner held a memory of pressure, panic, and fleeting control. The Morse operator's eyes traced final notes, pencil poised, unsent, unread, yet marking history in the silence that remained. Instruments hummed quietly, needles steady, or perhaps imagined steady, each man questioning readings with every pulse. The ballast valve sat cold, untouched. Potential release, potential doom recorded only in the weight of our hands. Logs, charts, and maps were stacked neatly, damp edges curling. Evidence of a journey incomplete but painstakingly preserved. I exhaled slowly, chest tight. Questions hung like mist, unresolved mysteries tracing paths no one could follow. Under dim red light, all stations empty, silence absolute. Steel water and memory kept witness to choices, fears, and fate.